John Thornton here, allproblogger.com with my AFC North report for week number 4. At the number 4 spot, I'm going to put the Cleveland Browns. That spot was occupied by the Cincinnati Bengals last week. This week, I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns. The Browns fell to 2-2. They lost at home to the Tennessee Titans, and the Titans are a pretty good team. But if you look at the Browns' first 4 games, they played a poor game against the Bengals, a lot of penalties, not lining up defensively. Just not a sharp game to open up the season against the Bengals, and they lost. They beat a Colts team in Indy. We found out the Colts aren't very good. The Colts are 0-4 currently. And then the Browns came back and they beat the Miami Dolphins, who are 0-4 currently. And they came back and won that game in the last minute. And so, if you look at everything that they've done, and then they finished up here this last week against the Titans, who the Titans are 3-1 right now. A pretty good team. They turned out to be a pretty good team. So the Browns are up and down. I'm going to put them at number 4. They took a step back offensively. Colt McCoy did last week. Peyton Hillis missed the 3rd game with strep throat. Came back this past week. Wasn't a huge part of the game plan, but I just think the Browns, very one of the division, are the number 14 this week. At number 3, I'm going to put the Pittsburgh Steelers. Even though I've had them number 1 after week 2, last week I had them number 2. This week I'm going to put them number 3. They lost to the Houston Texans, and the Texans are a good team. Week 1, the Steelers lost to the Ravens, and the Ravens are a good team. The Steelers beat the Seattle Seahawks 24-0. At home. So, and then they went and followed that up with the Sunday night game against the Colts, where they won that game late. The Colts are a good team at home. They gave the Steelers probably their best shot. They didn't want to go 0-3, and the Steelers came in a tough environment, national TV game, and they beat the Colts. So the Steelers are up and down. The reason I got them number 3 is because their offensive line it hasn't been great over the past few years, but now, even though it hasn't been great, those guys are hurt. And they're signing guys off the street to bring in there and play. That's never a good sign for an offensive line. And that's the one unit on your team that you want continuity. The Steelers don't seem to have that. Big Ben is a little banged up, which he always plays, so I don't worry about that as much. But James Harrison is out now for about a month. The Steelers' run defense is giving up big yards. The opening game to the Baltimore Ravens, they gave up 5 yards a carry. Last week, they gave up a lot of rushing yards to the Texans. So the thing that the Steelers always did best, which was defense and run defense, that seems to be failing them at this point. So this week, I'm going to have to put them number 3. They've earned this spot. Number 2, I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals were last in my rankings last week after they lost to the San Francisco 49ers. This week, they beat an undefeated Buffalo Bills team in Cincinnati at home, and they looked pretty good in the second half in doing that. They showed a lot by coming back from a 17-3 deficit against a team that had been playing pretty well offensively. So you would have thought that the Bills could put up points once they got down, or once they got up on the Bengals, 17-3. But the Bengals defense, which is number 1 in the NFL right now, played a pretty solid game all the way through. Really, 1 or 2 drives were bad for the Bengals defensively. Other than that, they played solid ball. The Bills got a touchdown by their own defense. So, the Bengals really only gave up 10 points defensively to a high-scoring unit. So the only problem I have with the Bengals is something that's going to be an issue all year, and that's Andy Dalton. He's going to be up. He's going to be down. If you're going to play a rookie quarterback, you got to be able to deal with it as a team. You got to say, hey, he's going to have some good moments. He's going to have some bad moments. And the first half of last week was bad. The second half, he played okay, and he allowed his teammates to help him win the game. He didn't have to go out and win it. I did like that he took some shots down the field, and he gave his athletic wide receivers, tight ends, a chance to make plays. And then he just played a heady second half. It wasn't great. It was a heady one. So I put the Bengals number 2. They earned it. They deserve it. So they're number 2. Number 1, I'll go with the Ravens. They beat a decent New York Jets team. The Jets aren't as good as they've been in the past, but the Ravens handled them. They scored defense. They scored touchdowns defensively, created a lot of turnovers. I like the Jets' running game with the new zone blocking scheme that they have. They cut block on their offensive line, which really gets under the skin of defensive linemen, and it makes the defensive linemen come into the game thinking about it. So right now, the Jets' run game and their short passing game with Ray Rice and him making a lot of yards is really the key to their victories. Joe Flacco, who I said on here last week, and I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of. He just plays too slow for me. He's not an up-tempo quarterback, and that usually is what usually gets them in trouble in the playoffs. But right now, the Ravens, they beat the Steelers. They lost to a good Titans team in Tennessee. They went up and they beat the Rams pretty handily up in St. Louis, and they came home and they beat the Jets. So the Ravens hold the number 1 spot for me in this week's rankings. This week in the AFC North, you have the Browns have an off week, the Ravens have an off week, the Steelers host the Titans, and the Bengals go down to Jacksonville. Tough game for the Bengals, tough place to play. Similar teams, rookie quarterbacks. I think this game will be a lot tougher than people will initially think, and I think that the Titans and Steelers game is going to be interesting. The Steelers' backs are up against the wall. The Titans are a decent team. They have a little bit of rivalry there going back some years, back to Houston. So that's going to be a good game as well. There you have it. The Browns, number 4. Steelers, number 3. The Bengals, number 2. And the Ravens, number 1 in my Week 4 AFC North report.